December 20th, 1943. Over the skies of Germany, a B-17 bomber nicknamed Ye Olde Pub fights to stay airborne. Its fuselage is riddled with holes, the engines coughing, crew members wounded, and one man dead. Charlie Brown, the young American pilot, grips the controls, pushing the aircraft through flak and enemy fighters, desperate to get his men home. Every second feels like an eternity. Every shadow in the clouds a potential death sentence. Then, through the chaos, something impossible happens. A German fighter appears, a Messerschmitt Bf-109, but it does not fire. Instead, the fighter pulls alongside the battered bomber, flying in formation, escorting them through enemy territory. Charlie watches, stunned, as the German pilot looks him in the eyes, salutes, and then slowly peels away. That moment of mercy saves 10 lives. Both pilots return home, and in accordance with military orders and the rigid rules of war, never speak of it again. For Charlie, though, the memory never fades. For 43 years, he carries one question. Who was that pilot? The man who risked his life and career to spare strangers. The one who chose humanity over duty, mercy over murder. Charlie goes on to live a full life, finishing his Air Force service, attending college, joining the State Department, traveling the world, and eventually retiring to Miami as an inventor and family man. But beneath the surface, the war never leaves him. Nightmares haunt him, cold sweats wake him, and always, the image of that German pilot lingers, watching him, silently judging, silently saving. Franz Stigler. The German pilot also carries the memory in silence. Landing near Bremen after escorting the bomber, he knows what he has done is punishable by death. Sparing an enemy aircraft is a court-martial offense in Nazi Germany. If anyone discovered it, he would be executed. Yet he cannot forget the sight of the wounded crew through the holes in the fuselage, the desperate struggle to survive. He returns home, survives the war, emigrates to Canada in 1953, marries and builds a successful life as a businessman. Yet the memory remains, a ghost of a day when a single decision changed 10 lives. In 1986, decades later, Charlie attends a reunion of combat pilots called the Gathering of the Eagles. Boeing is celebrating the 50th anniversary of the B-17, and old pilots share stories of missions and heroism. When asked about his most memorable mission, Charlie finally speaks. The crippled bomber, the German fighter, the salute, the escort to safety. The story captivates the room, and suddenly everyone asks the same question that has haunted Charlie for decades. Who was that pilot? Charlie realizes that after 43 years, he has carried this question without seriously attempting to answer it. He decides he must find him. For the next 4 years, Charlie searches. He writes letters, makes phone calls, contacts the U.S. Air Force, checks German archives, combs through historical records. Every lead leads to a dead end. Records are missing, destroyed, or classified. Months turn into years. The question persists, haunting him like a phantom of the past. Meanwhile, Franz Stigler, now living in Vancouver, Canada, also seeks closure. He has long wondered if the bomber crew survived, if the men he spared lived. He contacts old Luftwaffe associations, attends veteran gatherings, asks quietly about the B-17 he remembered so vividly. Then, in January 1990, Franz sees Charlie's letter in a newsletter for combat pilots. The date matches, the location matches, the story matches. Finally, after 47 years, he knows the men survived. He writes a simple letter. I was the one. When Charlie receives it, the decades of doubt, nightmares, and unanswered questions finally dissolve. The two men speak on the phone, confirming every detail, every memory of that day. Charlie learns that Fran had tried to direct them to land in Germany, or neutral Sweden. But the Americans pressed on toward England. Fran had protected them through flak and fighters, risking everything to let them live. That single encounter, lasting only minutes in the air, had left an indelible mark on both of them. 6 months later, they meet in Seattle. Fran steps out of a car, sees Charlie, and runs into his arms. They weep together, once enemies, now inseparable friends. They meet the surviving crew, their families, the generations that exist because of one man's courage and mercy. They travel together, share their story with the world, and teach a lesson that resonates far beyond war, that even in the darkest circumstances, humanity can prevail. Fran dies in March 2008. Charlie in November 2008. They are buried thousands of miles apart, but their story remains inseparable. Two men, connected by a fleeting encounter in the sky, prove that one act of courage, one choice to see the human beyond the enemy, can echo across lifetimes. Their story, later immortalized in the book A Higher Call, teaches that even in war, there is room for honor, mercy, and humanity. In 1986, Charlie Brown attends a reunion of combat pilots called the Gathering of the Eagles. The event celebrates the 50th anniversary of the B-17, and veterans share stories of missions, heroism, and survival. When asked about his most memorable mission, Charlie tells the story of the crippled bomber, the German fighter, the salute, and the escort to safety. The room grows silent. People lean forward, captivated. Then comes the inevitable question: who was that pilot? For the first time in 43 years, Charlie realizes that the question that has haunted him must finally be answered. He begins searching. He writes letters, makes phone calls, contacts the U.S. Air Force, queries German archives, requests records from historical offices. Months turn into years. Records are missing, destroyed, incomplete, or classified. Dead end after dead end. Yet Charlie cannot let it go. Nightmares continue, the memory of that day refusing to fade. Meanwhile, Franz Stigler, now living in Vancouver, Canada, has also wondered about the bomber he spared. Did the crew survive? Did they make it home? Over the decades, he quietly asks around, contacts old Luftwaffe associations, and attends veteran gatherings, seeking any hint of the answer. Then in January 1990, everything changes. Franz sees a letter from Charlie in a newsletter for combat pilots. The date, location, and circumstances match his memory. He knows immediately the crew survived. Fran writes a simple letter, 4 words that will change decades of silence. I was the one. Charlie receives the envelope and opens it. Decades of unanswered questions finally resolved. They confirm every detail in phone conversations: the flak, the wounded crew, the damaged bomber, the salute. Fran explains that he had tried to divert them to Germany or neutral Sweden, but the Americans pressed on toward England. That fleeting encounter, just 10 minutes in the air, had saved lives and left an indelible mark on both men. 6 months later, they meet in Seattle. Fran steps out of a car, sees Charlie, and runs to embrace him. The two men, once enemies, weep together. They meet the surviving crew and families that exist because of Fran's courage and mercy. From that moment on, they speak weekly on the phone, travel together, and share their story with the world. They show that even in war, humanity can prevail. Fran dies in March 2008, Charlie in November 2008. Though buried thousands of miles apart, their story remains inseparable. Two men, bound by an extraordinary act of mercy, teach the world that one choice can echo across lifetimes. Their legacy is a reminder that even in the darkest hours, compassion can triumph over conflict. December 20th, 1943. Over Germany, a badly damaged B-17 bomber, WWII, fights to stay airborne. Engines sputter, flak rips through the sky, and crew members are wounded, one already dead. Charlie Brown, the pilot, grips the controls, desperately trying to keep his men alive. Suddenly, a Messerschmitt Bf-109 appears. Charlie expects death, but the fighter does not attack. Instead, the German pilot pulls alongside, salutes, and guides the bomber through enemy territory. 10 men survive because of that act of mercy. Back in England, Charlie reports the encounter during debriefing. His commanding officers are shocked but firm. Never speak of it again. If word got out that German pilots could show mercy, it could create dangerous sentiment, they warn. Charlie obeys, keeping the story secret, even from his own crew. The memory of that German pilot will stay with him for decades. In 1986, Charlie Brown attends a reunion of combat pilots called the Gathering of the Eagles, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the B-17. When asked about his most memorable mission, he tells the story of the crippled bomber and the German fighter who escorted them to safety. The room falls silent. Then comes the inevitable question: who was that pilot? For the first time in 43 years, Charlie realizes he must find an answer. He begins a painstaking search, writing letters, making phone calls, and contacting historical archives in both the US and Germany. Months turn into years, filled with dead ends, missing records, and incomplete documentation. Yet Charlie cannot let it go. Nightmares, flashbacks, and memories of that day continue to haunt him. Charlie writes a detailed account of the encounter and submits it to a newsletter for combat pilots. He includes every detail: the date, location, BF 109 markings, and the salute. He waits, unsure if the German pilot survived the war. Meanwhile, Franz Stigler has also quietly searched for years, contacting veteran associations and old Luftwaffe groups to learn whether the bomber crew survived. Then, January 1990, Franz sees Charlie's letter in the newsletter. The details match perfectly. He knows the crew survived and writes a simple, life-changing response. "I was the one." Decades of unanswered questions are finally resolved. Both men feel the relief and closure that had eluded them for almost half a century. Charlie and Fran confirm every detail over the phone: the flak, the wounded crew, the damaged B-17, the salute. Fran explains that he had tried to divert the Americans to Germany, or neutral Sweden, but they pressed on toward England. That brief 10-minute encounter changed 10 lives and left an indelible mark on both men. 6 months later, they meet in Seattle. Fran steps out of a car, sees Charlie, and runs into his arms. Once enemies, now inseparable friends, they weep together. They meet the surviving crew and their families, all alive because of Fran's courage. They travel together, speak publicly at air shows and veteran gatherings, and share their story with the world. Their friendship proves that even in war, humanity can prevail. Fran dies in March 2008, and Charlie in November 2008. Buried thousands of miles apart, their story remains inseparable. Their friendship proves that even in war, humanity can triumph. Through their story, millions learn that one act of courage and mercy can echo across lifetimes, touching families, friends, and generations. Fran and Charlie's lives, forever intertwined by a single decision in December 1943, teach the world that even in the darkest moments, compassion and humanity endure.